In his book, The Problem of Pain, C.S. Lewis argues that those who experience huge amounts of suffering are actually blessed in a sense, not cursed, because it's that suffering that pushes them into the arms of God, forces them to develop a relationship with God as a refuge from their suffering. It's only God and nothing in this world that can provide relief that's comparable to that sense of peace that one has when one connects with the divine. Where am I going with this? Well, this is a follow-up video to yesterday's commentary on why I'm not going to do a jaw surgery, at least not anytime soon. At least not as long as my pain is manageable. What I'm saying is, I think not only is it dangerous to overtreat a managed condition like mine, because the downsides could be worse than the benefits. That would be a defensive argument about why I'm not doing jaw surgery, but now I'm going on the offensive. Why is there actually a benefit to preserving a little bit of pain in my life? Why might 1 or 2 headache days a month actually be good for me? And I'll tell you, it's always those days when I have really bad headaches that I am forced to shut down my normal routine, be in bed in quiet and in the dark, and seek refuge through prayer, through meditation, and through mindfulness of the present moment, where I have to use mindfulness to scan my body, looking for areas where there is no pain, where I can then settle my attention and find relief. And this is a skill that I would lose if my pain didn't force me to use it on occasion. And I think that's valuable because someday the pain and the suffering will come. None of us escapes that fate. Hardship, aging, illness, disease, whether they come now in our youth or they come when we're 70 or 80 years old and falling apart naturally, we're going to need that skill of being able to cope with pain. So might as well sharpen that knife a little bit as you go rather than get caught off guard in old age or at any point when disease suddenly hits. A lot of you might think that this message is cope, and sure, maybe I am just stuck in analysis paralysis where I'm trying to justify reasons not to do jaw surgery out of fear. And there could be some truth to that too. But I genuinely don't think that humans are meant to live totally pain-free lives. From an evolutionary biology perspective, life was never easy. And it's actually when we confront some pain and then survive it and come out the other end that we feel that huge dopamine surge. I remember hearing recently that the biggest biological cascade of catecholamines occurs when we think that we're defeated and when we're down, and then suddenly we persevere and overcome and have victory. And I thought about the Patriots when they were down 28-3 in the Super Bowl and then came back to win, and remember seeing the players on the Patriots just explode with fervor and joy when they came back to win. And I think that that's an important truth about human psychology, is that we're wired to not just coast all the time in this kind of low-grade feeling good. We're meant to have a little bit of up and down. And this jives with my experience of having headaches too. The day after having a headache, or even that same day, if the headache breaks midday, which it often does around 4 or 5 p.m., if I'm fasted or even medicated, the spell breaks, and the feeling I have of having survived the episode is just bliss. There's no greater high than that. As many of you know, from January through April, I work as a tax preparer in my family's accounting business, and that is the most intense 3 months of my year for sure. And I work 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day, and I'm pushed way past my breaking point. And that's the time of year when I'm absolutely the sickest. The rigorous schedule and being pushed by client appointments and deadlines and having to crank out tons of tax returns, standing in front of 3 monitors all day with fluorescent lights beaming down on me in the office in an environment I can't control because there's other people working alongside of me. That's when I have the most headaches. But it's also when my relationship with God is the strongest. It's when I'm forced to really be on my game from a diet point of view, from a time-restricted eating point of view, and just in general, my discipline has to be nearly perfect, or else the headaches will be constant. So tax season is like a whetstone for me. It keeps my knife sharpened. It forces me to be on my A game from a lifestyle and a spiritual point of view. This past tax season was so intense that I would often find myself waking up in the night, wondering how the hell I was going to get through it. And the only answer I could find to that anxiety was to pray and to ask God to help me through the struggle. I hate being preachy, and I know the God stuff doesn't land for a lot of people, but I think the overall point that a little bit of pain and suffering can be healthy should hit for a lot of UARS and sleep disordered breathing patients. I'm saying it's okay to manage rather than cure these conditions. Sure, do what you can to treat them. Lord knows that I have, and I continue to. But once you get to that point where you're on the verge of going overboard, in my case, doing a jaw surgery that might have more risk than reward, that's when I think it's important to step back and consider, hey, wait a minute, maybe not only is it safer for me to just have a little bit of pain and accept that, but there might actually be a silver lining to it. And that silver lining being that pain pushes us closer to God as a refuge and demands that we keep our prayer and meditation skills honed a little bit along the way. I'll point you to one other piece of writing that is very relevant to this point, and that is a short story by Leo Tolstoy called Master and Man. And in that story, there are two characters. There's the wealthy landlord and his peasant, Nikita. The story is set in the winter in Russia, and the greedy landlord is eager to go look at this piece of land and buy it, and he doesn't want to miss the opportunity. And the landlord asks his peasant Nikita to come with him on this treacherous carriage journey in the winter to go make this deal. As they're on this carriage ride through the countryside so that the landlord can make this deal, an unexpected blizzard blows in, and they get stuck in it. The snow falls so thick that the horse in the carriage can't even get through it, and they both realize, wow, we're probably going to freeze to death out here. Confronting death, the landlord, who has never experienced privation, starts to go psychologically crazy and freaks out as he faces death. The peasant, Nikita, who has lived a life of hardship, is at peace with it. Because his life has been so rough and difficult, he's developed a relationship with God, seeking refuge and peace, not just in this world, but in his relationship with God. And facing death, he's totally at peace. In fact, he sees it as a kind of relief, a relief from the suffering of his life, not in a morbid sense, but in a spiritually mature sense. The line that always stuck with me from that short story goes something like this. Tolstoy, commenting on Nikita's peace in the face of death, he says, in fact, Nikita saw his impending death as relief because his life has not been, quote, one big holiday. When your life is one big holiday of pleasure and bliss, that dulls you spiritually, and it prevents you from looking beyond this life to the next, where maybe true peace can be found. But it can be tasted in this life by developing a relationship with the divine. And that's the role that pain has played for me, and that's the trump card for me as to why I am not ready to take the huge financial and physical risk of doing a jaw surgery just to knock out that last 25% of my headache condition. All right, let me know what y'all think, and I'll check y'all soon. Peace out.